I remember the day everything changed. It was a typical Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sun streams through the windows, casting warm patches of light on the worn carpet. I was nestled in my favorite armchair, a quilt draped over my lap, the scent of fresh tea lingering in the air. Sarah and James were in the kitchen, their voices rising and falling like the tide. I thought they were discussing plans for dinner, but then I caught a glimpse of their true conversation. "Maybe it's time we look into assisted living," Sarah suggested, her tone cautious yet firm. My heart sank. James hesitated. "But Mum is still... well, she's fine, isn't she?" There was a tremor in his voice, a hint of doubt. Fine. I wanted to scream that I was fine. Who were they to decide my life? The betrayal clawed at my insides. I wanted to shout, "I'm still here! I'm still me!" But instead, I stayed silent, a lump forming in my throat. I felt trapped, like a bird in a cage, fluttering against the bars. The look on their faces told me everything. They were worried, but their concern felt more like a shackle than a safety net. I had always prided myself on my independence. I had raised them alone after their father passed, instilling values of strength and resilience. How could they even think of placing me in a care home? The tension in the air was palpable, thickening with each passing moment. I wanted to talk to them, to explain that despite the struggles, I wasn't ready to give up my freedom. But I was also terrified. Terrified of being a burden, terrified of losing my sense of self. My mind raced with thoughts, each one sharper than the last. Maybe I should just become a recluse, I mused quietly to myself, the idea both frightening and strangely comforting. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the answer. I had to find my voice again, yet all I felt was a paralyzing fear of the future. As the days passed, I became increasingly isolated. I would sit in my chair long after the sun had set, the shadows creeping in like unwelcome guests. Memories of laughter and joy began to fade, replaced by a heavy silence. I missed the sound of my husband's voice, the warmth of his presence. It was a void that nothing could fill. I recalled the family gatherings, the way the living room would burst with life. We would gather around the table, sharing stories and laughter, each moment a thread weaving us closer together. But now, I felt like a ghost haunting my own home. Sarah would call, checking in, her voice filled with concern. "Mum, are you all right? You sound a bit off." "Yes, dear, I'm fine. Just a bit tired," I would reply, forcing a smile that only I could see. James would visit more frequently, bringing his children along, filling the house with their youthful energy. They would bounce around, laughter echoing in the corners. I would watch them, my heart aching with a mixture of love and sorrow. I wanted to join in, to play, to be the grandmother they deserved, but the weight of my worries held me down like an anchor. Then came the day I forgot to take my medication. It was a small mistake, one that anyone could make, but it spiraled into a minor health scare. I felt dizzy, my heart racing as I sat at the kitchen table, the world spinning around me. Panic washed over me when I realized what had happened. Sarah arrived just in time, her face a mask of worry. "Mum, you scared me." "I'm sorry, love. I just lost track of time." That was the moment everything shifted again. "Maybe we need to look into some help for you, Mum, just to be safe," James suggested, his voice laced with concern. I felt the walls closing in. How could they not see that I was still capable? This was not me. I was not someone who needed help. I had always faced my challenges head-on, with faith and determination. That night, I confided in Mary, my closest friend. Over cups of tea I poured out my heart. "I feel like they're trying to take my life away from me," I admitted, tears streaming down my cheeks. Mary nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "You're stronger than this, Lisa. You need to fight for what you want." Her words lingered with me, a gentle reminder that I still had a voice. I had to confront my fears, but the thought of family therapy sent chills down my spine. What if they couldn't understand? What if they saw me as weak? In that moment, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could either let fear dictate my life or muster the strength to reclaim my independence. I had to pull through. I needed to stay strong for myself and for my family. But what I didn't know was that this journey of self-discovery would lead me to revelations I never saw coming. A storm was brewing, and I stood on the precipice, ready to face whatever lay ahead. But what I didn't know was that my children were hiding secrets too, secrets that would change everything. I remember a time when our home felt like a sanctuary. The laughter of children played like sweet music in the air. Photos adorned the walls, each frame a memory, a snapshot of joy. Sunday dinners were a ritual, the table laden with dishes that had been passed down through generations. We were a family, united, strong. But I didn't know then that the storm clouds were gathering, hidden in the corners of our seemingly perfect life. In those days, the world felt like a warm embrace. I'd wake up to the smell of fresh coffee, the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, casting a glow on my husband, John, who was already reading the paper. The children, Sarah and Michael, would tumble down the stairs, their sleepy faces lighting up at the sight of breakfast. We were together whole. But little did I know, the cracks were forming beneath the surface, invisible to the naked eye. I often think back to that summer, when everything began to change. We were at the park, the children chasing after each other, their laughter echoing across the green expanse. I watched them, my heart swelling with pride. But there was a whisper in my mind, a nagging sensation that something wasn't right. I brushed it aside. I had faith. I believed that everything would work out. But as the weeks passed, the warmth began to fade. I noticed subtle shifts in the children. Their laughter became less frequent. Sarah would often retreat to her room, her door closed tight. Michael became distant, his eyes clouded with something I couldn't quite grasp. I tried to reach out, to draw them back into the light, but it felt like I was grasping at shadows. Then came that fateful day. I had just returned from the grocery store, bags in hand, when I overheard a conversation that stopped me in my tracks. Sarah, her voice barely above a whisper, was arguing with Michael. "You have to tell her. She deserves to know." My heart raced, a cold wave washing over me as I pressed my ear against the door. Michael's voice was heavy with reluctance. "But what if it breaks her? What if she can't handle it?" The words were like daggers, piercing my heart. I felt a chill run through me. What were they talking about? What could possibly be so terrible that it would shatter our family? I opened the door, forcing a smile, trying to mask the turmoil inside. "What's going on, kids?" They froze, guilt written all over their faces. The innocence of their childhood seemed to slip through my fingers like sand. "Nothing, Mum," Sarah replied too quickly. The tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I wanted to press them, to demand the truth, but something stopped me. I sensed they were scared of me, scared of the truth. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it school? Friends? Boys? The world outside was changing so fast. I felt lost, a mother adrift, unable to save her children from the storm that was brewing. Days turned into weeks, and the rift grew. I tried to bridge the gap, but every attempt felt like throwing a stone into a deep well, no sound of a splash, just silence. I turned to my faith, praying for guidance, for strength. I sought comfort in Scripture, clinging to the promises of hope and redemption. "For I know the plans I have for you," I would whisper to myself. But those words felt hollow amidst the growing distance. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Saturday, the sun shining bright as I prepared for our family barbecue. I thought it would be a chance to bring us all together again. I busied myself with the grill, the smell of burgers wafting through the air. Laughter erupted from the backyard, but it felt distant, like a radio playing a tune I couldn't quite grasp. Suddenly, Sarah stormed inside, her cheeks flushed with anger. "Why can't you just see what's happening?" she yelled, her voice breaking. "You're so wrapped up in your own world, you don't even notice." The words struck me like a slap. I felt a wave of confusion and hurt. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked gently, trying to reach her through the storm. "Michael is hiding things from you. We're all hiding things from you. You need to wake up." In that moment, everything shifted. I realized I had been so focused on keeping our family together that I had been blind to the cracks, the pain lurking beneath the surface. My heart raced as I processed her words. What were they hiding? But before I could respond, Michael entered, his expression a mix of defiance and fear. "Sarah, stop it. You're going to make it worse." "Worse? How can it get worse?" she shot back. The tension crackled in the air. I stood between them, feeling the weight of their emotions pressing down on me. "We're a family," I said, my voice steady but filled with urgency. "Whatever it is, we can face it together." But I looked at me with doubt. I could see the hesitation in their eyes, the fear of what revealing the truth would mean. It was in that moment I understood I had to dig deeper. I had to find the strength to confront whatever lay ahead, for the sake of my children. But what they didn't know was that the truth would shake our family to its core. It was a truth darker than I could imagine, a revelation that would test our bonds, our faith, and our love. I took a deep breath, knowing I was standing at the precipice of something monumental. "Tell me what's going on," I urged, my heart pounding. "Please." But what they didn't realize was that the storm was only beginning to brew, and I was about to discover the depths of betrayal that lay beneath the surface. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken words. I sat in the living room, the same room where laughter once filled the air. Now, silence reigned. My children, once so close, had grown distant. It started with small things, an offhand comment, a rolled eye, little jabs that cut deeper than they seemed. I could feel it in my bones. Something was off. Sarah, my youngest, had become particularly cold. I remember a Sunday dinner, the smell of roast chicken and fresh vegetables wafting through the house. I'd set the table with my best china, hoping to spark some warmth. But as we sat down, the tension was palpable. "Why do we even have to do this?" she snapped, her fork clattering against her plate. The others exchanged glances, and my heart sank. "Because we're family, Sarah," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is important." "Important? You mean for you to feel like you can control us?" Her words stung like a slap. I looked at my husband, David, hoping for support, but he merely sighed, his eyes downcast. It was then that I noticed the weight of their discontent. Each meal, each gathering felt like a minefield. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just a phase. But deep down, I sensed it was more than that. I began to experience health issues too. It started with fatigue, an overwhelming tiredness that no amount of rest could shake off. The doctor said it was stress, but I knew it was something deeper. I felt like I was carrying a heavy burden, one that my family was oblivious to. "Mom, are you okay?" Jennifer, my eldest, asked one evening. Her tone was more curious than concerned. "You seem off." "Just tired," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. I sensed that my children were pulling away, and the harder I tried to hold on, the more they slipped through my fingers. "Is it the house?" Michael, my middle child, suggested one day. "Maybe we should sell it." The thought of selling the family home, the very foundation of our memories, felt like a betrayal. "This house is our home. It's where we grew up," I said, almost pleading. "Maybe it's time to move on," he countered, his voice firm but devoid of warmth. "Move on? From what?" I felt a swell of anger. From our memories? From our family? But inside, I was questioning myself. What had I done to push them away? I prayed for clarity, for strength. I needed to find my footing in this shifting landscape. Then, during one particularly difficult week, I faced a humiliating moment. I was at the grocery store, lost in thought, when I overheard a conversation between two women. "Did you hear about Susan?" one said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Her family can't stand her. They practically shun her." My heart raced. I knew they were talking about me. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but instead, I stood frozen, the weight of their words suffocating. I walked out of the store, tears streaming down my face. How had it come to this? I felt like a ghost in my own life. When I got home, I confronted my family. "Why are you all so distant?" I demanded, my voice shaking. They looked at me, surprised. "We're not distant," Sarah replied, crossing her arms defensively. "Then why do I feel like I'm losing you?" My voice broke. The silence that followed was deafening. That night I prayed harder than I ever had, pleading for guidance. I could feel the darkness closing in, but I also felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was my moment of redemption. The next morning I woke with a sense of determination. I decided to take control of my health. I started exercising, going for walks, and focusing on my well-being. I found strength in the little victories. "Mom, you're looking better," Jennifer noted one day, her voice softer. "Thanks, love," I replied, feeling a surge of pride. But as I began to heal, the fractures in my family persisted. I could sense the tension simmering beneath the surface. And then, it happened. One evening, I received a call from the doctor. My heart raced as I picked up the phone. "Mrs. Thompson, we need to talk about your test results." I could feel the world tilting beneath me, the ground shifting. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Please come to the office. It's important." I hung up, my mind racing. What did that even mean? That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a sense of dread wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. What was I about to face? But what I didn't know was that those results would change everything. As I sat in the waiting room, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment everything shifted. I was on the brink of something monumental. The doctor walked in, his expression serious. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid we found something concerning." My heart sank, and in that moment, I realized I had to stay strong. I had to find my faith amidst the chaos. But what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of a much larger battle. And as I faced this new challenge, I could feel the tides turning. But the question remained, would my family stand by me, or would the fractures widen into an insurmountable chasm? The truth was about to come crashing down, and I had no idea how it would all play out. The evening air was thick with tension. I could feel it in my bones. It was a family gathering, but that night, love felt distant. My heart raced as I walked into the room, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. I forced a smile, hoping it would mask the turmoil within. My daughter, Sarah, was the center of attention, her laughter ringing like a bell, but I sensed something lurking beneath the surface. "Look at her," Elizabeth whispered to Jennifer, her eyes narrowed. "It's like she doesn't even care." The words cut through me. They were sharp and cruel, aimed not just at Sarah but at everything I had worked for. I wanted to respond, to defend my daughter, but the words got stuck in my throat. "Let it go," I reminded myself. "Don't make a scene." So I stayed silent, forcing myself to engage with the others. It felt like walking on eggshells. I could still hear snickers and hushed comments aimed at Sarah. My heart sank. She was my child, my flesh and blood, and yet, here we were, surrounded by family, yet completely alone. As the evening wore on, the tension escalated. Sarah tried to laugh it off, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. Each joke, each cutting remark, was a bullet aimed at her spirit. I wanted to wrap my arms around her, to shield her from the venomous words, but I was frozen, caught in a web of familial loyalty and fear. "Why don't you ever wear that pretty dress I bought you?" Elizabeth asked, her tone dripping with mock concern. "Maybe it just doesn't fit anymore?" The laughter that followed was like a weight pressing down on my chest. I could see the pain flash across Sarah's face. It was a moment that would haunt me. "Leave her alone," I finally blurted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Silence filled the room. All eyes turned to me, shock painted across their faces. I felt small, vulnerable, but it was too late to take it back. "Who do you think you are?" Elizabeth shot back, her voice sharp. "You're just enabling her." "Stop it!" Sarah cried, her voice breaking. "Just stop!" My heart shattered at her pain. I reached for her, but she turned away, retreating to the corner of the room. She needed space, and I could only watch, helpless. The laughter that had once filled the room faded into a heavy silence. I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. It was suffocating. I had spent years building this family, nurturing these relationships, but in that moment, I felt like a stranger among them. "Maybe you should just go," Elizabeth added, her voice low and cutting. "You're not welcome here." The words were like daggers, aimed straight at my heart. I felt the heat of shame wash over me. How had it come to this? But as the anger bubbled inside me, I realized I couldn't let it end this way. I turned to Sarah, who was now standing with her back against the wall, tears glistening in her eyes. "I won't let them take you from me," I thought fiercely. Suddenly, I felt a surge of strength. "No more," I declared, my voice steady. "This is our family, and we deserve better." It was a bold statement, one I hadn't planned, but I meant every word. "Maybe it's time for some honesty," I continued, locking eyes with Elizabeth. "You've pushed us away for too long. We're not going to let you dictate who we are." The shock on their faces was palpable. I could feel the tension shift, a crack forming in the facade of our family dynamic, but there was still a long way to go. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that this conflict was only the beginning. I had stood up for Sarah, but what would it cost us? Could I really pull through this storm? I prayed for strength, for healing, for redemption. But deep down, I knew one thing. I was ready to fight for my daughter, no matter the cost. I had to believe that together, we could overcome this darkness. Yet, as I closed my eyes, the uncertainty loomed large. What would our family look like after this? The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but I held on to hope. I had to stay strong. I had to believe we could mend the wounds, forge new paths. Because what they didn't know was that love, when tested, can become an unbreakable bond. But as I drifted off to sleep, one question lingered in my mind. What would be the next move in this game of betrayal and loyalty? I felt the walls closing in on me, the weight of betrayal heavy on my chest. The echoes of Elizabeth's words lingered, sharp and painful. "You're not welcome here." They wrapped around me like chains, binding me to this moment of despair. But deep inside, a flicker of resolve sparked. I couldn't let this be the end. Sarah stood there, her eyes filled with tears. They were the kind of tears that spoke of fear and confusion, the loss of a safe haven. "Mom, what do we do?" she whispered. Her voice cracked, breaking my heart anew. I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around her. "We fight. Together," I said. "No one can take you from me." "Fight? Against them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling a surge of energy coursing through me. "Yes, we deserve honesty, love, and respect. I won't let them dictate our lives anymore," I said, my voice steady, filled with determination. The following days felt like a storm. I found myself on the front lines of this family battle, gathering my strength, piecing together the fragments of our shattered relationships. I reached out, finding support in friends who listened and offered encouragement. Each conversation became a lifeline. "Hang in there," they reminded me. "You're not alone." But the shadows of doubt still loomed. Every time I faced Elizabeth, I felt the sting of her contempt. She would toss barbed comments my way, each one a reminder of the divide between us. "You think you can just waltz back into our lives?" she sneered one evening. "You've lost your place here." "Have I?" I shot back, refusing to let her words pierce my heart. "This family is more than your control." I'm reclaiming my voice. The revelation hung in the air, a bold statement that startled even me. That night I lay awake, my mind racing. Would this declaration lead us to healing or deeper fractures? I prayed for clarity, for the wisdom to navigate this tumultuous sea. "Lord, give me strength," I whispered into the darkness. "Guide us through this." I needed to believe that change was possible. As the days turned into weeks, I began to uncover truths that I had long buried. Old family photos surfaced. Memories that once brought joy now felt like echoes of a past tainted by resentment. I began to notice the little things, how Sarah would flinch at a harsh word, how laughter felt forced during family dinners. One evening, as I rummaged through a box in the attic, I stumbled upon a document, yellowed with age. My heart raced as I opened it. A will, my father's will. But there was something else, a clause that had been hidden, a secret that could change everything. My hands trembled as I read the words. "In the event of my passing, all assets are to be distributed equally among my children, provided they maintain familial harmony." I couldn't believe it. This was the key. The very thing that Elizabeth had manipulated for her own gain. The bitterness flooded back, but now it felt like fuel. "This ends now," I whispered to myself, determination flooding my veins. I knew I had to confront her, but how? A plan began to form in my mind. I would call a family meeting, a chance to lay everything on the table. The thought made my stomach churn. What if they turned against me? What if this only deepened the rift? The day of the meeting arrived. I prepared myself, rehearsing my words. "Stay strong," I muttered under my breath, feeling the weight of the moment. As they filed into the living room, I could see the tension in their eyes, the unspoken words hanging in the air. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I know things have been difficult, but I believe it's time to talk, really talk." Elizabeth crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "Talk? About what? You have nothing to say that we don't already know. No, Elizabeth. It's time for the truth, I said, looking around at my family. We've let secrets and lies dictate our lives for too long. I found Dad's will, and it changes everything. Gasps filled the room. My heart pounded. He wanted us to share everything equally, but that requires harmony, and we've lost that. Elizabeth's face paled, and I could see the anger bubbling beneath the surface. You think you can just come back and change everything? She spat, but I could see the cracks forming. This isn't just about money, Elizabeth. It's about us. It's about healing. We've lost sight of what family truly means, I said, my voice rising with passion. We can't keep living like this. We deserve better. But as I spoke, I could feel the tide shifting. The air thickened with tension. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide with hope and fear. Mom, can we really do this? Yes, I said firmly, locking eyes with her. We can, but we need to face the truth together. But just as I felt a flicker of hope, Elizabeth interjected, her voice cold. You really think this will work? You're delusional. Maybe, I said, my heart racing. But what choice do we have? We can either keep tearing each other apart, or I can try to mend what's broken. Silence filled the room. I could feel the weight of their judgment, the uncertainty hanging in the air, but I wouldn't back down. I had to believe that love could conquer this darkness. Yet, deep down, I knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was long, fraught with challenges. Would we find our way back to each other, or would this confrontation tear us apart forever? As the meeting drew to a close, one question echoed in my mind. Could our family really heal, or were we destined to repeat the cycle of pain? The morning light slipped through the curtains, painting the room in golden hues. But inside, I felt a storm brewing. I stared at the ceiling, questioning everything. My heart was heavy, and doubts swirled. How could we get past this? I thought about Sarah. She needed me. I needed to be her anchor. The strength I felt last night was still there, flickering like a candle in a dark room. I had to find a way to navigate this maze of betrayal and hurt. Mom? Sarah's voice broke the silence, soft yet laced with uncertainty. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her eyes wide and vulnerable. Are we going to be okay? Her question hit hard. I wanted to shield her from the truth, but the weight of our reality pressed down on me. We will find our way, sweetheart. I promise. But could I keep that promise? I had to dig deep. I could feel the walls closing in, the pressure mounting. Elizabeth's words echoed in my mind. You're not welcome here. They stung like a bee, relentless in their attack, but I wouldn't let them define us. I took a deep breath. Let's go for a walk, Sarah. Fresh air will do us good. As we stepped outside, the crisp morning air enveloped us. I watched as the leaves danced in the gentle breeze. Nature had a way of reminding me of resilience. Look at those trees, Sarah. They stand tall, even when the winds try to knock them down. She nodded, her eyes still clouded with worry. But what if we can't stand tall, Mom? A lump formed in my throat. We will, and here's why. It's about finding strength in love. Even when things are tough, love can pull us through. The path we walked was uneven, much like our lives. We passed the park where we used to play, laughter echoing in my memories. Remember when we used to come here and make daisy chains? I asked, trying to lighten the mood. Sarah smiled faintly. Yeah, and you'd always say I was a flower-crowned queen. Because you are, my queen, I replied, trying to infuse hope into the moment. You have strength inside you, just like those flowers. You bloom even in the toughest conditions. We continued walking, and I could feel her tension slowly easing. What if Elizabeth never forgives us? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination, I said, recalling the lessons I had learned about faith. We have to trust that, in time, hearts can heal. But first, we must heal ourselves. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Elizabeth. We need to talk. I looked at Sarah, and her eyes widened. Do you think she'll listen? I believe she'll have to, I said. But it won't be easy. It never is. As we made our way home, I felt the weight of the upcoming conversation. It was a daunting task, but I had to stand my ground. This was about more than just me. It was about Sarah. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I prepared for the confrontation. I gathered my thoughts, praying for clarity and strength. The air was thick with tension as I heard Elizabeth's footsteps approach. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. I nodded, though my heart raced. "We have to be. We can't let fear hold us back." When Elizabeth walked in, her expression was unreadable. "Why did you call me?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. "Because we need to talk," I said firmly. "This family is worth fighting for." She opened her mouth to protest, but I pressed on. "You've pushed us away, and it's time for honesty. We can't heal if we're constantly hiding from each other." The silence was deafening. I could see the conflict brewing in her eyes. "You don't understand," she snapped. "You think you can just waltz in and fix everything?" "No, I don't think that," I replied, voice steady. "But I do believe we can start to mend the broken pieces, together." Her gaze softened for a moment, and I seized the chance. "This is about more than just us. It's about Sarah. She deserves a family that loves her unconditionally." Elizabeth's expression shifted, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through her anger. "I've been hurt too, you know." I felt a rush of empathy. "We all have, but we can't let that define us. We can find hope again." Just when I thought we were making progress, she shook her head. "I don't know if I can forgive." "Forgiveness takes time," I said, my heart pounding. "But we can't start healing without it. We owe that to ourselves and to Sarah." Elizabeth's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You think it's that easy?" "No, I don't," I breathed. "But we have to try. For the sake of our family." In that moment, something shifted. The tension in the room felt lighter, the air crackling with unspoken possibilities. I could sense the walls beginning to crumble, but it was still fragile. Then, as if fate had chosen that instant to intervene, Sarah spoke up. "I just want everyone to be happy again." Her words hung in the air, pure and honest. I felt a lump in my throat as I looked at Elizabeth, searching for any sign of agreement. But the moment was fleeting. Elizabeth's expression hardened again. "You think I can just forget everything?" "No, I don't," I replied, frustration creeping into my voice. "But we can't keep living in the past. We need to forge a new path." Just then, the door swung open. It was James, my brother, stepping into the fray. "What's going on?" he asked, sensing the tension. I glanced at Sarah, then back at Elizabeth. "We're trying to talk." James's eyes darted between us, confusion etched on his face. "Is this about what happened last night?" "Yes," Elizabeth snapped. "And I'm not sure I want to be a part of it." "Please, let's not make this worse," I said, desperation creeping in. "We need to find a way to move forward." James crossed his arms. "Maybe we need to take a step back. This isn't something you can just fix overnight." "Tell me something I don't know," I shot back, the frustration boiling over. But as I looked at Sarah, I remembered why we were fighting. I had to keep the faith. We can't give up, not now. And just like that, I realized, this was just the beginning of our journey. A journey of healing, redemption, and love. But as I stood there, I wondered, would we have what it takes to pull through this storm together? The answer lingered in the air, heavy with possibility. In the dim light of the kitchen, I found myself staring at the crumpled letter. It felt like a key to a door I had never wanted to open. The words danced before my eyes, taunting me with their implications. Hidden within this mundane piece of paper was a truth I had been blind to for too long. My heart raced. This was the beginning of unraveling a web of deceit. "Why didn't I see this sooner?" I whispered to myself, the weight of regret heavy on my shoulders. I had spent years trusting my family, believing in their love. But as I delved deeper into the contents of the letter, I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. It spoke of a trust fund, a significant inheritance, and a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was emotional, a breach of trust that shattered the very foundation of our family. With shaky hands, I reached for my phone, determined to uncover more. I needed answers. I called Sarah, my daughter, hoping she would shed light on this dark corner of our lives. "Sarah, can you come over? We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'll be there in a bit," she replied, her tone laced with confusion. I could sense her uncertainty, and I dreaded the conversation that awaited us. When she arrived, the tension was palpable. I could see the questions swirling in her mind. "What's going on, Mum?" she asked, her brow furrowed. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the truth I had to lay bare. "It's about this letter," I said, handing it to her. Watching her read it, I saw the realization wash over her face, and I knew I wasn't alone in this battle anymore. "You deserve to know. We both do," I added, my voice thick with emotion. "Who else knows about this?" she asked, the fire in her eyes igniting. "Has Dad seen it?" My heart sank at the mention of her father, William. He had been a pivotal player in our family's deception, but could I really lay all the blame at his feet? As Sarah and I sat there, the kitchen felt more like a battleground than a sanctuary. The walls that had once echoed laughter now bore witness to our unraveling. "We need to confront him," she declared, her determination shining through the cracks of her fear. "We can't let him control this anymore." "Hang in there, Sarah," I said softly, feeling the surge of hope. "We'll pull through this together." But deep down, I knew we were entering a storm, and I wasn't sure how we would emerge from it. The next day, we arranged to meet William at the local cafe. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the tension in the air. I felt like a lioness, ready to confront the predator of my pride. As he walked in, his usual charm was replaced with an unsettling wariness. "Why are we meeting?" he asked, his eyes darting nervously. "Because we need to talk about the letter," Sarah said, her voice steady, "and about the trust fund." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. William's expression shifted. "I don't know what you mean," he stammered, but I could see the cracks beginning to form. "Don't lie to us," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "We know everything." The cafe fell silent, the chatter of other patrons fading into the background. "Fine," he said, his voice low. "But you don't understand the full picture. I had my reasons." "Reasons?" Sarah echoed, disbelief etched on her face. "You've kept us in the dark for years. What could possibly justify this betrayal?" He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the weight of his secrets bearing down on him. "You wouldn't understand. It was to protect you." "Protect us?" I shot back, my anger flaring. "You've only protected yourself!" The conversation spiraled into a heated exchange, each of us trading accusations like blows. I felt the rage boiling inside me, the years of feeling sidelined and unheard erupting into the open. But amidst the chaos, I sensed a flicker of understanding, a realization that perhaps we were all victims of this twisted game. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding," I said, my voice breaking. "We can't heal if we're still buried under these lies." William looked at us, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in his eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then be honest with us," Sarah pleaded. "We can't move forward until we know the truth." He hesitated, and in that moment, I realized the depth of his fear. The fear of losing us, of losing his family. "All right," he finally said, his voice trembling. "I'll tell you everything." But just as I thought we were on the brink of revelation, a shadow fell over our table. Elizabeth, my sister, stood there, arms crossed, a smirk on her face. "What's this? A family meeting without me?" The tension escalated. "You shouldn't be here," I snapped, my heart racing. "Why? Afraid I'll expose more secrets?" she taunted, her eyes glinting with malice. The air was thick with the weight of unspoken truths. My heart raced, knowing this confrontation was far from over. I felt the walls closing in, the fragile bond of our family once again teetering on the edge. But as I looked at Sarah, I knew we had to stand our ground. "Stay strong," I whispered to her, my heart resolute. "We can face this together." Yet deep within me, a chilling question lingered. What was Elizabeth really after, and how much more of our family's past would be dragged into the light? I could feel the storm brewing, and I braced myself for the turbulent journey ahead. I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me, suffocating my spirit. "You're just being dramatic," Elizabeth shot back, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're the one who's caused this mess." Her words cut deep, an accusation I wasn't prepared to face. I felt the air thicken with tension, like a storm was brewing. "Is this really how we want to handle this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Are we going to tear each other apart?" I glanced at Sarah, who looked as lost as I felt. I couldn't let her see how shaken I was. I had to be her shield, her protector. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you started meddling with our lives," Elizabeth snapped, crossing her arms. The coldness in her tone was palpable. I could see the fire in her eyes, fueled by years of resentment. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet room. "This isn't just about you anymore. This is about family. Our family." I took a deep breath, feeling the anger give way to something deeper: fear. Fear of losing the very people I fought so hard to keep close. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just a conflict. It was a reckoning. We were all wounded, carrying scars that ran deeper than the surface. "We need to talk this out, to heal," I implored, my heart racing. "Can't we at least try?" Elizabeth's expression softened for a split second, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. But then it was gone, replaced by her usual defiance. "You think talking is going to fix this? You don't even know what's really going on." "Then tell me," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. "Help me understand. I want to be part of this family, but you're pushing me away." "I don't know if I can trust you," she admitted, a crack in her armor. "You've hurt us, and it's hard to forget." "Trust is built, not demanded," I said softly, my heart aching for her. "I'm here to rebuild, not to tear down." Sarah stepped forward, her small frame trembling. "Mom, please, I don't want to choose sides. I just want us to be a family again." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. I reached for her, pulling her into a hug. "Neither do I, sweetheart," I said, my voice breaking. "But we need to confront the truth, together." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. I could feel the tension begin to shift, the storm clouds parting just enough for a glimmer of hope. But just as I thought we were making progress, Elizabeth's phone buzzed, pulling her attention away. "I have to take this," she said, her face hardening again. "I can't do this right now." "Always running away," I thought bitterly, but I kept my mouth shut. Instead, I turned to Sarah, who was watching her sister with wide, confused eyes. "We'll wait," I said, forcing a smile. "We have to be patient. This is just the beginning." As I sat there, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering dangerously close to the unknown. I had taken a stand, but what would that mean for us? Would we find the strength to heal, or would we crumble under the weight of our own pain? The next few days were a blur. I tried to reach out, to mend the rifts, but every attempt felt like a step back. Elizabeth was distant, her anger simmering just below the surface. Sarah seemed caught in the crossfire, torn between loyalty and love. One afternoon, I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. As I strolled through the park, I spotted a group of children playing, their laughter ringing out like music. It struck me how simple their joy was, untouched by the complexities of adulthood. I envied their freedom, their ability to forgive and forget. "Hang in there, Mary," I whispered to myself, trying to find solace in the moment. "You've faced storms before. You can pull through this." But deep down, I knew this was different. This wasn't just a family squabble. It was an unraveling of everything I held dear. I prayed for guidance, for strength, for a way to bring us back together. I clung to my faith, believing that if we could just find a way to forgive, we could heal. The following weekend, I gathered the courage to invite everyone for dinner. "It'll be good for us," I convinced myself. A chance to reconnect. I spent the day preparing, pouring my heart into every dish. As I set the table, I imagined laughter filling the air, memories being made. But as the clock ticked closer to dinner time, doubt gnawed at me. Would they come? Would they even want to? When the doorbell rang, I felt my heart leap. It was Sarah, her eyes bright with hope. "I'm so glad you're here," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Me too, Mom," she whispered. "I want this to work." Before I could respond, Elizabeth walked in, her expression guarded. "I'm only here for Sarah," she said flatly, but there was a hint of weariness in her tone. As we sat down to eat, the atmosphere was tense. Forks clinked against plates, but conversations were stilted. I could feel the weight of unspoken words lingering in the air. "Let's talk," I finally said, breaking the silence. "We need to address what's been happening." Elizabeth rolled her eyes, but I pressed on. "We can't ignore this. We're family. We need to fight for each other." I don't know how to fight for something that feels broken, she shot back, her voice rising. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. We can't give up on each other. There's still love here, even if it's buried beneath the pain. Love doesn't fix everything, she countered, her eyes narrowing. You don't understand how much you've hurt us. It's time to forgive, I urged, my heart racing. We can't heal if we keep holding on to the past. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could see the flicker of uncertainty in Elizabeth's eyes, but would she be willing to listen? But just as I thought we might reach a breakthrough, Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression shifting from hope to dread. I need to take this, she said, her voice small. Not now, Sarah, Elizabeth snapped, her frustration boiling over. Please, just a minute, Sarah pleaded, her eyes pleading. As she walked away, I could feel the walls closing in around us. Stay strong, I reminded myself, but doubt crept in. Would we ever find our way back to one another? As the evening wore on, I realized that our path to healing would be anything but easy, but I also felt a flicker of hope, a belief that together we could overcome even the darkest of times. Yet, as I lay in bed that night, the question lingered. Would our love be enough to bridge the chasm that had formed between us? Or was this just the beginning of a deeper unraveling? I watched Sarah walk away, her shoulders slumped, a broken spirit retreating into the shadows of her phone call. I turned back to Elizabeth, her frustration palpable, her eyes blazing like coals. You think this is easy for me? She shot back, her voice trembling. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. It's not fine, I agreed, my heart racing. But we can't keep tearing each other apart. That's not who we are. My voice softened as I leaned forward. We need to remember what brought us together in the first place. Elizabeth shook her head, dismissing my plea. You don't get it. You don't know what it's like to feel abandoned, to see your family crumble. I just want to protect Sarah from all this. Protecting her means facing the truth, not hiding from it. I pressed on, my voice steady. We're stronger together, even when it hurts. We've got to be brave enough to confront our pain. She hesitated, her expression shifting. I could see the walls she had built around herself, brick by brick, slowly cracking. What if the truth is too much? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Then we face it together, I said, the weight of conviction filling my words. Remember, healing isn't easy, but it's what we need. We owe it to ourselves and to Sarah. Just then, the front door creaked open, and in walked John, his demeanor as heavy as the atmosphere in the room. What's going on? He asked, glancing between us. His presence felt like an anchor, but I could sense the tension in his posture. Just trying to talk, I replied, my voice calm. We need to sort through this mess. Sort? Through what? John shot back, his face hardening. You think talking fixes everything? It's a start, I countered, refusing to back down. We can't just avoid the issues. This family deserves better than silence. John crossed his arms, the tension palpable. And what if it gets worse? What if we can't fix it? Then we still try, I said, my heart pounding. We owe it to each other. We owe it to Sarah. We can't give up. He sighed, the fight slowly draining from him. I just want to protect you all, he admitted, his voice softer now. But I don't know how. By being honest, I replied. By showing up, even when it's hard. Family means standing together in the storm. As we spoke, I could see Elizabeth's resolve wavering. I could feel the air shifting, a crack forming in the facade she had carefully constructed. I'm scared, she finally admitted, her voice trembling. What if we lose each other? Then we fight to find our way back, I assured her, my heart swelling with hope. Love is worth the struggle. We just need to trust in that. In that moment, as the shadows of doubt loomed over us, I felt a flicker of unity. It was fragile but real. The warmth of familial love began to seep through the cracks, urging us to confront our fears. But as the evening wore on, uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud. Would we be able to break down the walls that had kept us apart for so long, or would we remain trapped in a cycle of hurt, unable to reach one another? As I lay in bed that night, I closed my eyes, praying for strength. I knew we were standing on the edge of something significant, but the question lingered. Would we take the leap into the unknown or retreat back into the safety of silence? The next morning, I awoke with a sense of determination. It was time to dig deeper, to confront the past that had been haunting us. I had to give us a chance to heal, to rediscover the love that still existed beneath the pain. But what I didn't know was that a revelation awaited us, one that would shake the foundation of our family even further. As I prepared for the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was about to come crashing down around us. I just hoped we would be ready to face it together. The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel Elizabeth's anger radiating like a heat wave. "You think it's that simple?" she shot back, her voice shaking with emotion. "You think we can just wipe the slate clean?" "No, I don't," I replied, my heart pounding. "But we have to try. We owe it to ourselves, to Sarah." Her eyes softened for a moment, just a flicker, but it was enough to spark a flicker of hope in me. "You're not the only one hurting here, Mary. We all are, but I can't just pretend everything's okay." "Neither can I," said, reaching out to her. "But we have to face this together. You, me, Sarah. We're stronger as a unit." Elizabeth looked away, her gaze dropping to her plate. "What if it's too late? What if we've already lost each other?" "Love doesn't just vanish," I insisted, my voice steady. "It's still there, buried beneath the hurt. We just need to dig it out." The moment hung heavy between us. The clinking of cutlery faded into the background, and for the first time, I saw the raw vulnerability in her expression. The walls she had built were tall, but maybe they weren't impenetrable. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," I replied. "Just a chance to show you that I can change, that I want to change, for us." Before she could respond, Sarah returned, her face pale. "I didn't want to interrupt," she said, her voice trembling. "But I think you need to see this." She held up her phone, and my heart sank. "What is it?" I asked, anxiety clawing at my insides. "It's about the house. There's been a new development," she said, her voice cracking as she scrolled. I could see Elizabeth stiffen. "What kind of development?" she demanded. Sarah's eyes flicked between us, filled with dread. "It's about the sale. There might be a way to stop it, but we need to act fast." "That's good news, isn't it?" I asked, but fear crept into my mind. What if it wasn't? What if this was just another hurdle? Elizabeth shook her head, frustration boiling over. "How can we focus on the house when we can't even talk about what's happening between us?" "Because we need to find our footing," I replied, desperation creeping into my voice. "We can't afford to lose everything. Not again." "Maybe it's too late for that," Elizabeth said, her tone bitter. "Maybe we've already lost each other." The weight of her words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I felt the tears prick at my eyes. "Please, don't say that. We're family, we can pull through this." Sarah stepped closer, her eyes glistening. "Mom, I don't want to lose either of you. I can't bear it." The room fell silent again. Each one of us was lost in our thoughts, an unspoken bond of pain and hope swirling around us. "Let's just take a breath," I suggested, trying to calm the storm within me. "We can figure this out, one step at a time." "Or we can let it all fall apart," Elizabeth countered, her voice taut with emotion. "It feels like that's what's happening anyway." "Then let's change that," I urged, my heart racing. "We have the power to change our story. Together." The tension in the air shifted, just slightly. I could see the flicker of doubt in Elizabeth's eyes, and my heart raced with the possibility of a breakthrough. But just as I thought we might finally connect, Sarah's phone buzzed again, breaking the fragile moment. "I need to take this," she said, stepping away, her expression torn. "Not now, Sarah," Elizabeth snapped, her frustration spilling over. "Please, just a minute," Sarah pleaded, her voice strained. "I have to know what's going on." "Can't this wait?" Elizabeth retorted, her voice rising with panic. "No," Sarah exclaimed, her eyes wide with urgency. "You don't understand. This is important." I watched helplessly as Sarah walked away, a storm of emotion swirling in her wake. "Stay strong," I reminded myself. "We'll get through this." But doubt gnawed at me. Would we ever find our way back to one another? The evening felt like quicksand, pulling us deeper into conflict instead of bringing us closer. As the night wore on, I realized the road to healing was going to be a long one, fraught with challenges. Yet, I clung to the flicker of hope within me. Together, we could overcome even the deepest wounds. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, one question lingered. Would love be enough to bridge the chasm between us? Or had we already drifted too far apart to reclaim our family? And then, just as I thought I might find some peace, a new thought crept in. What if the house wasn't the only thing at stake? What if there were secrets buried deeper than we could imagine? As the evening wore on, the tension tightened around us like a noose. Elizabeth's face was a mask of hurt and anger, each line etched deeper with every passing second. "You just don't get it, do you?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You think love can just erase the scars?" I felt the sting of her words like a slap across my face. "No, I don't," I replied, my own heart pounding in my chest. "But love can be the starting point for healing. We have to try." "Try?" she scoffed, shaking her head. "You've tried before. Look where that got us." Her eyes burned with an intensity that made me want to look away, but I held my ground. "Every journey begins with a step, Elizabeth," I urged. "We can't move forward if we keep digging up the past. That's not how healing works." She crossed her arms, a fortress built from years of disappointment. "And what about Sarah? She's caught in the middle of this mess. Do you even care about how all this affects her?" "Of course I care," I shot back, feeling the heat of frustration rise within me. "That's why I'm here. I'm trying to break this cycle of pain, for her sake and for ours." Just then, Sarah returned, her face pale and strained. The phone call had clearly shaken her. "I heard everything," she said softly, her voice trembling. I just don't know what to believe anymore." In that moment it hit me. This wasn't just about Elizabeth and me. It was about Sarah, too, and the fragile web of trust that bound us together. "We're all hurting," I said, my voice steady. "But we can't let this break us. We have to fight for each other, for our family." Sarah looked between us, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "But how? How do we fix this?" I took a step closer, my heart racing. "By being honest, by opening up about what we feel. No more secrets, no more hiding." Elizabeth's expression softened for a brief moment. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we can't come back from this?" "Then we'll find a way to move forward," I said, my voice firm. "We'll find strength in each other, even in the toughest moments." The air felt charged, a thick fog of unspoken feelings hanging over us. "What if we fail?" Elizabeth asked, her eyes glistening. "Failure is just a stepping stone," I reminded her. "It's not the end. It's a chance to learn, to grow. We can pull through this together." Tears pooled in Sarah's eyes, and I felt a pang of sorrow. "I want us to be okay," she have in action, whispered. "I want to feel safe again." "Then let's start here," I said, my heart swelling with hope. "We can rebuild. We can create a new foundation, one built on forgiveness and love." Elizabeth stared at me, searching for sincerity in my words. "It won't be easy," she warned, her voice low. "There's a lot of hurt between us." "I know," I replied, locking eyes with her. "But we can't let that define us. We have to choose to love, even when it's hard." The silence that followed felt like an eternity, each second stretching as we weighed the possibility of redemption. Then, slowly, Elizabeth nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's try." A small flicker of hope ignited within me. "We'll take it one step at a time," I promised, my heart racing with anticipation. "We'll find our way back to each other, I know we will." But just as relief washed over me, Sarah's phone buzzed once more, cutting through the fragile moment. She glanced at it, her face falling. "I need to take this," she said, her tone urgent. "Not again, Sarah," Elizabeth said, frustration creeping back into her voice. "I have to," Sarah insisted, her eyes pleading. "It's important." Watching her walk away, I felt the walls close in again. "Stay strong," I whispered to myself, but my heart pounded with doubt. Would this moment of connection hold? Or would the tides of conflict sweep us apart once more? As I lay in bed that night, thoughts raced in my mind. The question lingered like a ghost. Could we truly rebuild what had been broken? Or was this just a temporary truce before the storm returned? But deep down I felt a flicker of resolve. We were family, and with faith, patience, and a willingness to confront our pain, we could find our way back to each other. Yet, as I drifted into an uneasy sleep, another thought crept in. What secrets lay ahead that could either heal us or shatter us once more? The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. I woke up with a sense of unease, feeling the weight of yesterday's conversation still heavy on my chest. The rift between us felt like a chasm, one that seemed impossible to bridge. I rolled over, glancing at Sarah's empty bed, and my heart sank. She had walked away, seeking solace, leaving us to grapple with our pain alone. I brewed a cup of tea, the familiar ritual offering a moment of comfort. As I sat at the kitchen table, I couldn't shake the feeling that today had to be different. I had to find a way to reach Elizabeth. I needed to remind her of the love that still lingered beneath our hurt. "Stay strong," I whispered to myself, the words echoing in the stillness. I resolved to pull through, to fight for my family. I could sense the flicker of hope, no matter how faint, urging me on. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah. "Can we talk later?" My heart raced. She was in turmoil, and I felt the urge to protect her. "Of course," I replied, but my mind was already racing. I needed to mend things with Elizabeth before I could help Sarah. Once I finished my tea, I took a deep breath and made my way to the living room. Elizabeth was hunched over, scrolling through her phone, lost in her own world. I approached cautiously. "Can we talk, please?" She looked up, her expression a mixture of irritation and fatigue. "What's there to talk about? It's all been said, hasn't it?" I knew this wasn't true. "No, it hasn't. There's so much left unsaid. We need to face it together." I could feel my voice quiver, but I held my ground. "We can't let this tear us apart." Her eyes softened, just a fraction. "You think talking will fix everything? You think we can just forgive and forget?" I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "Not forget but heal. We can't keep dragging the past with us. It's weighing us down." I gestured to the empty space between us. "We're more than this pain. We're family." Elizabeth sighed, and for a moment I thought I saw a crack in her armor. "You don't understand how deep this goes." "I'm trying to understand," I replied gently. "I want to help you find your strength." She looked away, tears forming in her eyes. "I just don't know if I can trust again." "Trust is built, Elizabeth. It takes time, but we can work on it together. Let's take small steps. We can start with a family dinner, just the three of us. You, me, and Sarah." The idea hung in the air, fragile yet hopeful. "I don't know if Sarah will even want to come back," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then let's reach out to her. She needs us, and we need each other. We can't let this divide us." Elizabeth hesitated, the battle playing out in her eyes. "What if it goes wrong? What if it goes right?" I countered, my heart racing with possibility. "What if we find joy again? What if we rediscover our love?" The tension in the room shifted slightly, and I could see her resolve wavering. "All right," she finally said, her voice shaky. "I'll try." "Just try," I echoed, a smile breaking through the tension. "That's all I ask." But as I felt a glimmer of hope, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Michael. My stomach dropped. "I need to take this," I said, my heart sinking at the thought of what he might say. "Go on," Elizabeth replied, her tone still guarded. I answered the call, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hello? Mary, we need to talk," Michael said, his voice firm. "It's about Sarah." A knot formed in my stomach. "What's going on?" He hesitated, the silence stretching painfully. "She's struggling. I think she's in over her head." The words hit me like a punch. "What do you mean?" "She's been isolating herself. She needs support, and we have to step in before it's too late." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "What do you suggest?" "We need a family meeting, and we need to be honest. I can't let this go on any longer." As I hung up, I turned to Elizabeth, my heart racing. "We need to act fast. Sarah is struggling more than we thought." Elizabeth's eyes widened, and I could see the fear reflected in them. "What do we do?" "We gather our strength. We pull together as a family. We can face this." "Together," she echoed, a flicker of determination igniting in her gaze. But just as we were about to make a plan, Sarah walked back in, her face pale. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Sarah," I said, my heart aching at her vulnerability. "We need to talk. All of us." Her eyes darted between us, uncertainty written all over her face. I don't know if I'm ready." "Please, let's try," I urged, feeling the urgency of the moment. "We can't let this break us." As Sarah took a deep breath, I realized that this was our moment, the beginning of something new, a chance to mend what had been broken. But would we all be willing to step into the light, to face our fears together? And then, just as I felt a surge of hope, I saw the flicker of doubt in Elizabeth's eyes. Would she truly be ready to embrace healing, or would the shadows of our past hold her back? The air was thick with tension as we all settled into the living room. Sarah, her eyes still brimming with uncertainty, perched on the edge of the sofa. The quiet was almost deafening, the kind that wraps around you like a heavy blanket. I could feel Elizabeth's apprehension beside me, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. It was time. "Sarah, we're here because we love you," I began, my voice steady but my heart racing. "Michael called me. He's worried about you, and so are we." She looked down, her hair falling like a curtain around her face. "I don't need to be fixed," she murmured, barely audible. "No one's trying to fix you," I replied, my tone softening. "We just want to help. We want you to know you're not alone in this." Elizabeth leaned forward, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "We're your family, Sarah. We've all been through tough times. You're not a burden. You're our sister, our daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I could see the flicker of emotion in Sarah's eyes, the struggle between wanting to be strong and needing to be vulnerable. I don't know what to say," she finally admitted, her voice cracking. "Just be honest with us. What's really going on?" I pressed gently, encouraging her. As the words spilled from her lips, I felt the dam of her silence break. "I feel lost. I thought I could handle everything on my own, but it's suffocating. The pressure. It's too much." A wave of relief washed over me. She was finally opening up. "You don't have to carry this weight alone, Sarah. We're here to share it with you." She took a deep breath, the kind that came with a mix of fear and hope. "I just don't want to disappoint you. I feel like I've already let you down." "Never," Elizabeth said, her voice firm. "Disappointment doesn't exist in love. We're here to lift you up, not to judge you." I watched as Sarah's defenses began to crumble, piece by piece. "I've been so afraid," she confessed, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Afraid of failing, of not being enough." "Listen," I said, my heart aching for her. "We've all felt that way. It's part of being human. But you have to let us in. You have to let yourself be vulnerable." "Vulnerability is not weakness, Sarah," Elizabeth added, her voice soothing. "It's the first step to healing. You have to allow yourself to be seen." Sarah's eyes darted between us, searching for reassurance. "What if I can't pull through? What if I'm too broken?" "You're not broken," I said firmly. "You're a work in progress." "We all are. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to lean on us." Suddenly, a small spark ignited in her gaze. "But what if I fail again?" "We all fail, love. It's how we rise that matters. Remember that time when you thought you'd never make the soccer team? But you did. You fought for it." Her lips twitched into a faint smile, recalling the memory. "I did, didn't I?" "Yes, you did," I encouraged, my voice filled with pride. "And this is just another challenge. You have the strength within you. You just have to believe it." Elizabeth reached for Sarah's hand, squeezing it gently. "We believe in you, and you need to believe in yourself. Faith is about trusting that even in the darkest moments, there's light ahead." Sarah nodded slowly, the weight of her shame beginning to lift. "I'll try," she whispered, a newfound determination glimmering in her eyes. "Trying is the first step," I said, feeling hope blossom in my chest. "Just remember, we're all in this together." As we sat there, a wave of warmth enveloped us. The shadows of doubt began to retreat, replaced by the light of understanding and love. In that moment, I knew we were on the brink of something beautiful, something transformative. But just then, the sound of the door creaking open caught our attention. Michael stepped in, looking weary but resolute. I heard voices. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "No," Sarah said, her voice steadier. "We were just starting to talk." Michael's eyes softened as he took in the scene. "Good. Because we need to have an honest conversation as a family. There's more at stake here than we realize. The air thickened again, charged with anticipation. What was he about to reveal? What more could we face together? I glanced at Sarah, who met my gaze with a mix of fear and curiosity. We were all ready to confront the unknown. But little did we know, the journey ahead would challenge us in ways we could never have anticipated. And as Michael took a deep breath, I realized that the shadows of our past were far from gone. They lingered, waiting to be addressed. Would we have the strength to face them together? In that instant, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. But deep down, I knew that this was just the beginning of our fight for redemption, and we would fight together, come what may, because in the end, family is everything. And love is worth fighting for,